Welcome to BODS Mayhem Hour, your source for all hard rock, heavy metal, new metal, alternative, punk, horror punk, hardcore, rock, and all local bands, with your host, John the Bod, a.k.a. the Bodfather.
Hey, this is Evan from Wilderun, and you were listening to BODS Mayhem Hour.
The views and opinions of the guests do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of BODS Mayhem Radio Network, its staff, affiliates, or sponsors. Parental discretion is advised. Welcome to BODS Mayhem Radio Network.
Hey everybody, welcome to BODS Mayhem Hour. I am your host, John the Bod, a.k.a. the Bodfather, and as always, I'm bringing you guys and gals awesome interviews. Today, it's an honor and a huge privilege to have Evan Anderson, vocalist of Wilderun. Wilderun will release their self-produced album, Veil of Imagination, November 1st, and they have released their first single, Far From Where Dream Unfurl. That's out right now, so you want to get out, check this single out, and also you want to pick up their new album that's going to come out, like I said, November 1st. So, Evan, man, how's it going?
It's going great, John. Thanks so much for having me.
Not a problem whatsoever. How's it been working so far with Adrenaline PR?
It's been great. It's the first record we've actually gotten hooked up with a PR company. First two records, we just did everything ourselves, and we just kind of figured we want to step up that game a little bit. And, and that's ever since, for the first two records, I've been handling everything PR related myself, and I have very little expertise in it. So I just figured, if we can afford to get some other people on hand that really know what they're doing, then, all the better.
You stated, and I quote, "This album feels like the most natural, genuine thing we've created so far." I know you had the two previous albums out, but can you elaborate on this just a little bit?
Yeah, well, I feel like part of it simply just comes with being a band for long enough. A lot of times you just got to mess around with stuff, got to just write enough songs, play enough shows to where you just start to feel a little bit more comfortable in your skin and kind of, know what works, know what doesn't. But so I think part of it is just a matter of time and experience. But I think it's also, with this album, we just tried a bit less hard to fit into a certain mold. And I know that it sounds a little bit cliche, but it's definitely more true with this one than the previous two. I would say the previous two, we were a little bit more focused in on the world of folk metal and kind of the Viking metal scene and all that sort of Scandinavian stuff, which we love and is still a big influence on us. But we felt less like we were focusing on that, and more just kind of letting stuff happen without wondering what kind of genre it's going to be, what kind of, I suppose because of all that, because of that mindset, that more kind of relaxed mindset, the final product feels, just more natural and more, kind of more like us, more like what we wanted to sound like this whole time, maybe.
Give me 1 second. I'm sorry, man. So what's impressed or excited you the most about making the new album, Veil of Imagination? If anything, was there anything you wanted to add differently that didn't get added from the previous albums you wanted to add on this one, maybe?
Well, I guess one of the main differences that we were really excited about is working with a couple of our favorite mixing engineers and mastering engineers. We got to work with Dan Swano and Jens Bogren from Sweden, and just because up until this point, part of it was just simply a matter of connections and a matter of funds, but we finally were able to kind of reach out and work with some more people like that, kind of widen our base of collaborators, I should say. And that was really exciting. I mean, I'm super happy with the first two records and the mixing and everything. It was, we've worked with great people up until this point, but it was exciting to branch out to some bigger names in the scene and some people that have influenced us even before the band ever started. So that was exciting.
Writing this album, did it push you out of your comfort zone than what you're used to, possibly?
I would say, well, in one sense, yes, in one sense, no. I'd say that, as I said before, there was something even more natural about the way that this album came out. So in that sense, it was almost easier just because I felt like we weren't trying as hard to fit into any sort of mold. But I guess that with that comes the difficulty of, it's almost like the courage of, you have to have like a little courage to put something out there that you know is going to be a little bit different than your previous two records, because, you know, you get fans who hear one record and that's the record they love, and then some people don't necessarily want you to deviate from that. And that's, you know, and we totally appreciate people who love that sound and those records. But so I would say that it was maybe a little bit scary, I should say, to like to put out something that maybe experiments in a little bit of a different direction. So I don't know if that has much to do with the comfort zone of the songwriting or the production, but it has to do with the comfort zone of just giving it to the fans, if that makes sense.
Any tracks standing out more to you than any right now on the album? I know you're close to these. I know that must change every time you listen or read about it, but do you have any that stick out for you possibly, Evan?
Well, yeah, as you said, it definitely changes all the time, but I think right now, if I had to pick a song that just kind of feels the closest to my heart, it's probably the ending track, When the Fire and the Rose Were One. And just because I feel like the melodic writing, that I was just really proud of some of the melodic writing on that song. It felt really just, I don't know, emotionally close to me. And it's probably the least, that song is almost more quiet sections than heavy sections, really. But I don't know, it's just something about that song just kind of feels close to my heart, I'd say. So yeah.
Yeah, and I agree with you with this album. There's a lot of peaks and valleys. It's like a roller coaster ride, because you go with a heavy song and then you're right into something like instrumental stuff, you know, with the orchestral things, which I dig. I like this. I like this a lot because there's a lot of diversity in this album, man.
Thank you. Yeah, we I think part of that is maybe just we get a little bit impatient and a little bit, I don't know, kind of ADD with the way that we like to create music. We really like one thing, but then we kind of want to hear another thing, and then we want to jump and hear another thing, and that kind of, I don't know, it kind of keeps it exciting. And sometimes we find that having those really quiet sections, you know, might make it to where once the heavy stuff comes back in, it hits you harder even, so it kind of keeps your attention, I suppose. At least that's the goal.
Yeah, and I think you guys hit it out of the ballpark, because I don't want to listen to a record, say like a band puts out 5 albums and every song is the same thing. I mean, if it fits, it fits, but eventually you're going to have to change and get out of that box. You know, that's just my personal opinion.
Oh yeah, same here. That's our ethos as well, for sure.
Was it hard to choose between the current set of songs, which one would be the first single or a video you wanted to release or push for the album, or did you have to have outside help to decide on this? Because I know, like I said earlier, you're close to these songs. Yeah,
well, I mean, we decided on our own, but it was a little. We went back and forth a few times, just because it was the way that we write songs and the way that these songs come out. I don't think it's necessarily obvious what like the hit single would be. I mean, I think it's hard to call any of these songs hit singles. But we kind of. Well, we actually just released a second single yesterday, or 2 days ago. I'm forgetting. 2 days ago, we released a second single, the song "The Tyranny of Imagination," and we released that with a lyric video. And we ended up deciding on "Far From Where Dreams Unfurl" and "The Tyranny of Imagination" because we knew we wanted to release 2 singles, and we kind of figured that we felt like those 2 songs almost touched on 2 different distinct sides of the record. "Far From Where Dreams Unfurl" is a lot more melodic and bright and kind of upbeat, and then "Tyranny of Imagination" is much darker, much heavier, much a bit more sinister. And so we felt like those 2 songs would be a nice preview into how the album dynamics shift as a whole. So,
what do you hope everyone takes away, or message you hope they hear while listening to any of Wilderun's music in general? What do you hope they get from it, Evan?
Ooh, well, it's a hard one because it's so different for every person. You know, that's the totally unique. I guess everyone kind of gets their own thing out of it, but I just hope it sparks emotion in some way. I mean, it's a pretty simple thing, but I just hope it can make them feel something that maybe is a bit deeper, or kind of makes them, maybe it'll make them look inward a little bit more, make them feel a bit more connection to the people around them, or and not necessarily for any specific reason, just because there's emotion in the music, and if that can help people feel emotion in themselves, then that'd be great.
Veil of Imagination was recorded at Moore Sound Studios in Syracuse, New York. The album was produced by yourself, Justin Spalding, and Andrew Grayson. Let's talk about this, how this all came together for the producing and recording wise, because these are three different entities doing this.
It was actually recorded in two totally different time sections. It was February. This is a long time ago now. The February of 2018 was when we first started recording, and we basically did it in two separate chunks. We did with Justin Spalding. We recorded all the band stuff, the heavy stuff. So anything, the drums, the electric guitars, the bass, and then the lead guitars. And then I think it was probably about a 4-week break or so, something about that. And then just me and Dan, the bassist, came back in March and worked with Andrew on the vocals and the acoustic guitars. And I think that was it. Yeah, all the vocals and the acoustic guitars. So basically we had a different producer for a different engineer for those two different chunks. And then, who is the band, myself, Dan, and pretty much everyone in the band had some sort of say now and then in how the production would go. Everyone's, whenever they could, would sit in on the recording. And so that's why at the end of the day, it was kind of a production collaboration between those two guys who are awesome engineers and producers and the band.
But as far as yourself working with Andrew, did he get something out of you maybe that no one else could have gotten, possibly working with you on vocally wise?
Yeah, I mean, well, it's hard to say. I guess it was the first time I had worked with Andrew at all, but it was a great experience. And he has we specifically split it up this way because, Justin has a lot of history working with metal bands and drums and electric instruments, and Andrew has a lot more of a history of working with like singer-songwriters and folk musicians and indie bands. So we kind of thought it would be cool to get two different people from two different camps in on the recording project. And I think that it definitely, as far as my vocal performance goes, he's a great vocal coach. He helped me kind of, especially with the more delicate stuff, like kind of get a bit more of a even more delicate, quiet, emotional performance than I think I got on the previous two records. And yeah, but he was also he's not as familiar with the heavy metal stuff, but, we still recorded all the growls with him as well. And he was totally down and I think that performance came out well too. So yeah, it was absolutely a pleasure working with him. And I feel like if I may say so myself, I do think it's my favorite performance thus far on the record, and yeah, a lot of that credit goes to Andrew.
Who did the artwork for the album?
The artwork was done by a dude named Adrian Cox, and it's kind of a cool story because he has been kind of a fan of our music for a while. I'm forgetting exactly how it happened, but he reached out to us a few years ago, just kind of generally. Again, I'm forgetting. There might have been some personal connection with someone in the band. I wish I could remember, but he found out about us somehow and really loved the music. And then I hadn't heard of him, but then I started delving into his artwork, and I was kind of blown away. He has this very unique, very distinct style that is this sort of combination of very realistic, like nature, pastoral sort of paintings, but then he fuses it with these sort of surreal, strange creatures that it's almost hard to tell what you're looking at. And it wasn't even a plan to get him to do a piece of art, but we had made this record. The songs were about done. We were about to go into the studio, and we were just throwing around artwork ideas, and it's just kind of his name pops into my head, and we kind of realized that the artwork for the band and the atmosphere for the band has always very much been nature-based, and very much, we feel like the vibe has always existed in nature in some way. But there was something kind of new to this record musically that was maybe a little bit more surreal, a little bit more introspective and kind of out there. So it kind of made sense that his art would work perfectly for that, because he does have this nature-based world like we do, but then he has this other surreal, different element that kind of makes you question what you're looking at, and maybe makes you question what you're listening to. I don't know. So it just kind of all worked out, and everyone should go check out Adrian Cox's art, because all his work is amazing.
2012, you released Olden Tales and Deathly Trails, and in 2015, you released Sleep at the Edge of the Earth. How much growth do you see and progression from these two albums to Veil of Imagination, or has it grown from leaps and bounds possibly?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely changed quite a bit, especially from the first record. The first record had a very distinct idea. We kind of had our toes firmly in the folk metal world, and the kind of goal of that record was to take this sound that was more, mostly a Scandinavian sort of scene, and we wanted to kind of, and the scene that's very much based in old folklore and folk tales of a lot of different areas around the world, but we hadn't really seen too much of that had a distinctly American sound, or an American, talking about American folk tales and stuff like that. So we just kind of thought that, hey, this would be a really fun, interesting idea. We did a lot of research into old folk songs and, folk tales from North America, and infused them into our music. And we were super happy with that. And we love that record for that reason. But it was kind of, after we made the record, we realized that, that was that. And we didn't necessarily want to be pigeonholed into making every record like that. So but we also didn't want to lose all of the sound that we had kind of started to develop. So the next record, Sleep at the Edge of the Earth, was just kind of trying to take some of the elements that we really liked on that first record and make it more just our own, and make it all original songs instead of using folk songs, and just kind of make it more original. But yeah, but as I said earlier, I feel like this record, we've now kind of realized that we don't want to be nearly as concerned with the genre title, or the exactly what kind of mold it fits into. And I mean, there is still, folk metal elements on this record, but they feel kind of more like natural, as I said. They don't feel like we were trying to make that sort of record. It just kind of happened. So in that sense, yeah, I think that's definitely the most notable progression, I think, on this record, is that sort of letting go of what we're trying to do.
In your own opinion, Evan, what does Wilderun bring to the table for music that's not out there as of right now, if anything? I know no one's reinventing the wheel, but what does Wilderun bring to the wheel?
I feel like one of the things that on this record that we kept thinking, like compared to the last two records, I do think this record emphasizes the symphonic elements even more than the previous two. I mean, it's always been there, but I feel like some of the folk elements were dialed back and the symphonic elements brought more up to the front. And, like you said, it's not reinventing the wheel, but I do feel like I do get a sense that there's not enough bands out there that use the symphony and symphonic instruments in a unique way. And again, there are some bands. We're not the only one. There are some really creative symphonic metal bands out there, but for the most part, I think the symphonic metal scene is kind of the very kind of narrow, specific sound that you find for most metal bands that use the symphony, which is kind of strange, because if you really listen to symphonic music and orchestral music over the ages, there's so much variation. There's so many different genres within orchestral music. So it's always kind of been bizarre to me that orchestral metal is so narrow in its vision. So I'd like to think that this record is kind of pushing, maybe pushing the boundaries a little bit in terms of how orchestral music and other instruments like that can be incorporated with rock and metal music. And, it doesn't need to sound, not every symphonic metal band needs to sound like Nightwish. And Nightwish are great, but, so many bands kind of fall into that sound that, maybe it can help push the symphonic metal scene in a little bit of a different way. I don't know.
I like the symphonic metal. I like all kinds of stuff with metal, you know. And I know people's going to laugh at me when I say this, but you know what? This is just my opinion, and I like this. I like what Metallica did with the orchestra. I thought that was badass. I thought that was iconic, if you ask me. I like what you guys are doing. You know, I like what you guys are doing. I like what these older bands have done. Like you said, Nightwish, adding orchestral stuff to it. I like that, man, because people are not scared to go outside that box. It's your music. If you can't stand behind it, how can we stand behind it?
Absolutely. Yeah, I totally agree.
That got me fired up.
Yeah.
And I guess it's just I'm so sick of hearing, that's not metal. There is no, you know, how can I say this? There is no directions of how metal is supposed to be. You know what I mean? Metal is metal.
Absolutely.
There's no, I don't know. I'm getting fired up.
I totally understand. I mean, I think on that point, one of the main points of metal should be like a courageous attempt to do new things and to break the mold and to, you know, if it kind of goes against the whole mindset of, I think, of what metal should be if you start to think of metal as only one sort of sound. I think that kind of misses the point.
Yeah. I mean, if Judas Priest was
I agree.
If Judas Priest was to go out here and add orchestral stuff to their music, fans would love it. But if Metallica does it, it's God forbid that for some reason. I don't get it. But I love it.
Yeah,
I think it's great. I love it. I think it's great. So don't change. I like what you guys are doing for sure.
Thank you.
Evan, what can fans expect at a show from Wilderun who have not got to see you guys live as of yet? What are they going to get?
We try to create a certain atmosphere. We're actually upgrading some of our stage setup right now for these upcoming shows in November. Just kind of trying to create a specific atmosphere. You know, we try to. I mean, obviously, we're not at the point yet where we can bring the whole orchestra with us on stage. That probably would cost a little bit of money that we don't have. But you know, we play to the tracks, and we try to get a good mix of the band with the orchestra and the PA, and try to, you know, we always try to kind of sequence our songs in a seamless way with some seamless transitions. And I think for us, it's always just kind of about creating a vibe, creating, you know, a little bit of that world that you can step into for the 45 minutes or the hour that kind of just sucks you in, hopefully the same way that the record sucks you in, and you can just kind of lose yourself in it. So that's our goal.
What made you want to become a musician? What was that spark for you that said, yeah, that's what I want to do?
I don't know. I mean, I've been playing music since I was young, and my music runs in my family. My dad is a musician, is a great piano player and composer, and my grandfather was a piano player as well. And so it's definitely one of those things that kind of runs in my family. And I've listened. There's been music in the house basically ever since I was young, you know, but I don't know. I think it was definitely sometime in high school when I started to, you know, I always played in high school and, you know, in the band and I actually started on drums, and I actually played drums mostly throughout middle school and high school before I switched over. But I think what it was when I finally kind of picked up a guitar and started messing more around on the piano and writing. I think when I started really writing my own songs was when sometime in high school, I think, was when I think I fell in love with it in a deeper way. Because I always loved playing music, but I don't think just playing convinced me to try to make it something I'm doing all the time. But when I really started writing songs kind of became a deeper passion for me. So I think that's what did it.
Is there a country that stands out or shocks you that Wilderun gets support from, or your music even gets played in, possibly? Is there anything that kind of throws you for a loop, maybe?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I love getting, you know, when we get CD orders from strange, you know, countries, you know, like we've gotten orders from Russia, from just some really small Eastern European countries I've never even heard of. So that's always kind of cool. We get a lot of orders, like a strange amount of orders from Australia. Like I feel like there must be some, I don't know too much about the Australian metal scene, but it seems just totally based on the amount of orders we get from there, it seems to be quite alive and vibrant in Australia. So maybe we got to make our way down there, hopefully one day.
Never stop growing, my friend. Keep getting out to these locations that you never been to, because I'm sure you guys will get a huge fan base. That's for sure.
Yeah, I hope so.
Folks, you want to get out and pick up Veil of Imagination. That's out November 1st. Plus, you want to get out and pick up their older stuff from Wilderun. You will not be disappointed. Trust me, they have some great stuff. Evan, how can folks stay in touch with you guys? Buy this new album, merchandise, whatever you guys have out there, tour dates. How can they do this?
Well, the simplest thing is just go to Wilderun.com. That's WILDERUN.com. And from there, you can get that. That'll link you to all the other links. But, we sell all of our stuff through Bandcamp, Wilderun.bandcamp.com. And that's where right now the pre-order is available for the digital pre-order or the CD pre-order. And beyond that, just regular social media, Facebook, Instagram. We try to update those as often as we can. And, I think that's about it.
Well, now I feel like an idiot. I've been calling it Wilderun all fucking interview. It's Wilderun.
Oh, hey, it's okay. I would, about half the people call it Wilderun, half of them call it Wilderun. We don't care. And I don't even know it's right. So you call it whatever you like.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
No problem.
Before I let you go, Evan, would you care to do a promo for the show?
Oh, sure, yeah. Hey, this is Evan from Wilderun, and you were listening to BODS Mayhem Hour.
Everybody stick around. We got some great stuff coming up, and you only hear these interviews right here on BODS Mayhem Hour and BODS Mayhem Radio Network. Please get out and check out our Facebook page. It has our podcast link and our YouTube link. It's very vital that you all go out and subscribe to our YouTube link. Come on, folks. You subscribe to everything else. Even if a kid picks his nose, they've got like 1,000 views. Help somebody out who really loves doing music like I do. Subscribe to it, and, everything and all that we do is going up on our YouTube page, plus our podcast link. Also, get out and check out, I call it Wilderun. Evan said Wilderun, Wilderun, he don't care. So anyway, get out and pick up their new album coming out November 1st, Veil of Imagination. Also pick up their older stuff as well. Evan, I wish you guys the best of luck, and you're always welcome on here, man.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure talking.
You're listening to BODS Mayhem Hour.
Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.